I rank the top 10 teams in the NFL heading into 2024. Coming into this season, it feels like the league is absolutely stacked, so it was actually really difficult to put this list together. I honestly think there are 12 legitimate Super Bowl contenders, which means 2 of the teams that could win the Super Bowl aren't even on this list. The last time we saw an NFL football game, Patrick Mahomes was lifting up his 3rd Super Bowl trophy in 5 years. That is a 60% win rate, which means he is actually better at winning the Super Bowl than I am at winning one of my bets on a Sunday. Make sure you stick around to the end of the video because I think I might surprise a lot of you with the team that I ranked number 1. Let me know if you guys agree with my rankings, and before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that subscribe button and drop a like. It really helps out the channel. The number 10 team in the NFL is the Buffalo Bills. The only reason I have them this high, to be honest, is because of Josh Allen. He's literally going to be carrying harder than Iron Man carried the Avengers, so it's not looking as good for this team as it has in the past few seasons. He lost his number 1 receiver in Stephon Diggs, and Matt Milano, who's really the captain of their defense, went down in training camp, so it's going to be a tough road ahead for this team. But with Josh Allen at QB, I really can't bring myself to leave this team outside of the top 10. Number 9 is the Cincinnati Bengals. Another AFC powerhouse over the past few years. We've seen what this team can do with a healthy Joe Burrow, but as always, it's going to come down to how well this offensive line can play throughout the course of the season. If they can keep the dirt out of Cool Joe's beautiful blonde hair all season, I don't see any reason why this team can't move up the list. They're the only team other than one's quarterbacked by Tom Brady who have ever beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, but I don't trust this team to keep Joe Burrow upright long enough for them to make a deep run. I mean, just looking at this tweet from literally the second day of training camp, they're already looking holier than the Pope, and as Dogs Digest pointed out, the Bengals are already looking like they're in mid-season form. Number 8 is the Dallas Cowboys. They come into the season with a little bit of momentum now that they have CD under contract, but I don't think anyone forgot how embarrassing of a loss they suffered at the hands of the 7 seed in their own building to end last season. Dak had one of his best seasons as a pro last year, but outside of CeeDee Lamb, he really doesn't have any weapons to work with. They brought back Zeke this offseason, and they also just added Dalvin Cook, so I guess they're trying to attack defenses with the most worn down legs in football. I don't really know. Maybe they're just trying to prove that their offensive line can gain yards even with Franklin the Turtle running through it. Either way, they should still be a guaranteed playoff team. I just don't see how this team wins less than 10 games, so it's going to come down once again to whether or not they can get the job done in January. Speaking of January, the number 7 team on this list is the one that sent the Cowboys packing last year, and also the one that's responsible for most of my pain and suffering as a football fan throughout my life. The Packers still somehow have the youngest team in the NFL with an average age of 24.96 years, which makes me feel pretty old because I would be above average age on this team. As much as I don't like them, I always try to be objective, and I am very high on this team. I have Jordan Love as a sleeper candidate to win MVP. Last year didn't start so great for him, but it ended very strong with an exclamation point putting up 48 points in Dallas on the road. Number 6 is the Philadelphia Eagles. This is probably the hardest team for me to rank because honestly they have the talent to be number 1, but frankly the way they ended last season they probably don't deserve to be this high on the list. I'm a huge Jalen Hurts believer, so I won't tolerate any slander being thrown his way. He was hurt for most of last year battling through injuries, so I think he has a bounce back year in 2024. They did add Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio as coordinators in the offseason to help offset the fact that they have the least competent head coach in the league, so hopefully they catch some of that magic they had in 2022 with Shane Steichen and Jonathan Gannon. If they can just avoid a huge letdown again, they could very well end up being the best team in the NFC come playoff time. Number 5 is the Detroit Lions. Some people might say this is too low for them, but then those people should listen to themselves speak and realize they're saying that a preseason number 5 ranking for the Detroit Lions is too low, and then they'll realize how ridiculous that actually sounds. This team might have the most offensive talent in the NFL, so they should find themselves contending once again down the stretch. But personally, I don't think they did enough on defense to get them over the hump. However, this team was up 17 in the NFC Championship and on the verge of going to the Super Bowl. So if they can stay healthy all year long, they'll have a great chance to repeat their appearance in the NFL's Final Four. Number 4 is the Baltimore Ravens. This team is my pick to win the Super Bowl, so I'm obviously very high on them, but there are a lot of questions that need to be answered before people are seriously going to pick them over the Chiefs. The main question is whether or not Lamar can take off Harry Potter's invisibility cloak in the playoffs and actually show up when his defense is holding the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes to 17 points. They added Derrick Henry in the offseason, so there honestly shouldn't be a team in the league that could actually stop their run game. They really shouldn't even need more than one receiving threat, so if Mark Andrews can stay healthy alongside Zay Flowers, that should be more than enough firepower in the passing game down the stretch to contend in the playoffs. Number 3 is the San Francisco 49ers. I think most people would agree that this is still the most stacked roster in the NFL and has been over the past couple of years. They're coming off of their second Super Bowl loss in the Kyle Shanahan era, so if it wasn't for Patrick Mahomes, they honestly might be the team of the decade. There seems to be a lot of blame on the quarterback position with this team when they lose, mostly because they don't have a superstar type of guy at the position, and the roster is clearly good enough to win a championship, but I really think Brock Purdy is good enough to win a Super Bowl with this team. They haven't gotten the break they needed in the big game, and they've probably been the most unfortunate victim of the Patrick Mahomes era over the past few years. Regardless of how last year ended, this team is still an absolute powerhouse, and anything less than a return to the NFC Championship game would be a major disappointment. Number 2 is the Kansas City Chiefs. It's time for the Swifties to come home from the Eras Tour and dust off their number 87 jerseys, because Chiefs football is back in town and they are looking to make history by becoming the first ever team to win 3 Super Bowls in a row. This is the part of the video where you all head down to the comments and call me a moron. I'm not putting the Chiefs at 1 because frankly, I don't think they were the number 1 team last year. They somehow caught their opponents at the right time, and they honestly rode their defense in the playoffs down the stretch. Obviously, Mahomes is the best player in the NFL, despite the NFL 100 telling you that it's Tyreek Hill. I mean, seriously, NFL, ask the Dolphins fans who they would rather have. But people forget they actually struggled offensively by their standards for most of last season. Of course, they'll still be contending down the stretch, and I wouldn't be surprised if they win it again, but the way this team is constructed, I think they'll be beatable in the playoffs in 2024. And the number 1 team heading into the 2024 season is the Houston Texans. Talk about an all-time turnaround. This team was dead last on pretty much everybody's list last year, and now they'll head into the 2024 season as number 1 on my power rankings. Now, I know a lot of you will say this is too high for them, or I'm just glazing too hard, but I just believe that much in the ability of CJ Stroud and DeMeco Ryans. It's always great to have the best roster in the NFL, or the number 1 pick, or the best player at a certain position, but usually winning in the NFL comes down to the few key guys you have in leadership positions in your organization, and the Texans have it about as good as it gets in that department. I've never been more impressed with a rookie quarterback than I was with CJ Stroud last year. It's not just his ability to make all the throws all over the field, but his attitude is infectious and breeds confidence in that Texans locker room. This offseason, they added Stefon Diggs and Joe Mixon, so their offensive group will have Stroud, Diggs, Mixon, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell, and now they'll pair Danielle Hunter rushing off the edge with Will Anderson. This seems like a pretty fair time to make my second Avengers reference of the video. This team is number 1 for a reason, and I think a lot of you will come over to my side of the fence very shortly once you see what this team looks like when the season gets underway. That'll do it for the first edition of my 2024 NFL Power Rankings. It honestly feels like Christmas Eve with the season about to start tomorrow, and I just can't wait to get it going. I wish you and your teams the best of luck this year, unless you're a Packers fan. And as always, I hope you win big on Sundays when you bet the house.